Hello! Hello, hello, hello! Welcome to our first live stream of 2021. I am one of your hosts, Amiibo Jason, and with me as always is the man from the other side of the planet, where things aren't going as quite as bad as they are here in the US. The one, the only hero, TJ. How you doing?
I'm doing amazing. Hi, everybody. Like you said, things are pretty good on this side of the world.
That's always a plus. That's always a plus. So before we get too far into this, we always make sure that you guys can hear us, that you guys can see us, that everything doesn't sound terrible, because that's always a problem sometimes. This is the first stream we've done in some... When's the last time? I think the last time we did this was the last Smash announcement, right?
Steve. Yeah, like the day before Steve was announced.
Was
we
it
were
Steve?
speculating. Yeah, and neither one of us... Well, maybe you've done one since.
Yeah.
This was the last time that I did one, was when we were creating all kinds of logical speculation, and then bam, Sakurai surprises us again with something we absolutely did not expect.
So, I'm reading some of the comments that I'm not going to read out loud, but thank you. I appreciate your high hopes for us for tonight's stream. So yeah, here's the thing that we can kind of discuss about what's happening. This is the first Nintendo Direct since September 4th, 2019. And when I say the first Nintendo Direct, the first full-sized, not bite-sized, not mini, not special, not focusing on one topic, Nintendo Direct. The very first full-sized Nintendo Direct in over a year, almost a year and a half. Which is mind-blowing to me. And not to mention, we went back, my team and I went back this morning. We can't find a Nintendo Direct in recent memory or history that was 50 minutes long. The longest we found was 45. I'm not sure what you saw.
I recall was a dedicated one, and that was Super Smash Brothers for Wii U and 3DS 50 facts.
Yeah.
Which isn't a direct, but
not quite, but yeah.
It's like direct adjacent. And then the next closest that I can recall in recent memory was Terry, which was like around 40 minutes, right?
Was Terry 40 minutes?
Yeah, and it was basically because it was a Mr. Sakurai Let's Play where he went through, I think, all of classic mode or something like that.
Yeah.
Unless I'm really mixing it up. I'm pretty sure that that's somewhere in the neighborhood of correct.
But 50...
But like a regular dedicated direct, you have to imagine they've been storing some stuff up for a while.
Oh, yeah. My thought is Nintendo probably has their stuff together now from COVID. COVID's been going on for about a year now. I feel like they have their kind of method down to how they're going to get their stuff out. Because I sincerely think in the past, they weren't sure how long this was going to last. Do we need to save announcements for big events, for E3s, for whatever kind of event they might be, I don't know, hosting? And I think we're at a point right now where we've just kind of determined that's not going to happen anytime soon.
Yeah.
So I think Nintendo is something big for us. I really do.
Right.
And obviously, I think the big thing is they announced that we're going to get a new character. Well, I guess I should backpedal. They never said we're getting a new character for Super Smash Bros.
Correct. But you would feel like it would be very disingenuous for that to be the only game specifically mentioned and them not to at least reveal the next character, which is what we know is coming. We know that there are 3 more coming, and they could pull what they did with ARMS and just say, hey, it's going to be a character from this franchise.
Yeah.
Or even worse, hey, remember, there's 3 more characters coming out in the future. We'll have more information on that soon. It could be something like that, which would be very disappointing. Or I think what everybody expects is at least one of those upcoming characters is going to be revealed.
Yeah.
We're not terribly off the timeline on that. If they're going to make their original deadline, which I anticipate they're going to, they need to release 3 characters this year.
Wait, are we have 3 left? I thought we had 2.
6 total characters in this Fighter's Pass.
Man.
We've had first Min Min, then Steve, and then Sephiroth. So we've got 3 more.
You know, I still need to geek out with you about Sephiroth. I can't get over how excited I am for Sephiroth. The Amiibo alone is enough for me.
Yeah, that's going to be cool.
Yeah, it's going to be good stuff. So I'm going to give you the option tonight to lead us to at least our first topic.
Okay.
We know we're getting a Smash announcement of some sort.
Yes.
Nintendo also specifically called out that they were going to be focusing on games coming out in the first half of 2021, which I think was a very specific call out.
Yes.
In my opinion, I think that rules out Breath of the Wild 2, at least for a full reveal. I'm not saying that's not going to happen at all. So
Yes.
I'm going to allow you, my good friend, first say for what we should touch on tonight.
Thank you, my good friend.
I think
since Smash Brothers is what we know, and it's the one thing we know, so it's the least wild in terms of speculation. Why don't we start there?
All right, Smash it is. I got a Smash video ready to go. I mean, I have to get the ambiance set up, right?
Yeah, I'm already feeling it.
All right, good. All right, Smash it is. So we know there's a DLC fighter probably getting announced. I have, you know what? No, I said you get to lead this. I'm going to let you start the speculation on who could be the next fighter.
You know, anybody who follows our streams on the regular is going to feel pretty bored by this because I'm going to sound like a broken record. But again, I gotta say, I think it's going to be Crash Bandicoot.
Crash again?
I've been calling for Crash for the past several speculations that we've had.
Because he makes sense.
Because he makes so much sense. Not only does he make so much sense, but it's a character who has a long legacy in video gaming, was a former rival, is now currently available on Switch. He has a new game that just came out. He follows the exact same pattern as Sonic the Hedgehog did.
Yeah.
And I think that while I wouldn't go so far as to say he would have as big of an impact as Sonic the Hedgehog, I think he is the closest thing to that would match that in terms of bringing together the nostalgia of the 90s kids who are now parents who are buying this game for their kids, and themselves, and also kids who are currently playing and enjoying the Insane Trilogy and also Crash 4. So it just makes so much sense.
And Crash 4 got announced, less than a week ago for the Switch? So you have that too.
Yeah.
So I have a different theory on who it's going to be. I'd like it to be Crash. I still firmly believe Crash is going to be in the last three. Mm-hmm. Waluigi's got the last spot. That's his spot.
Oh, dude.
That's his spot.
From your lips to God's ears.
I'm telling you.
I hope so.
That is the last spot. I have a different theory on what to expect tomorrow, and it's all based on timing. I want you to follow me on this journey of what I think is going to happen.
Exciting.
2 days ago, Square Enix announced that Kingdom Hearts 1, 2, and 3, with the spin-offs, were coming to PC. Something that a lot of people were excited for. And when we see things ported to PC, I always tend to think if they can port it to PC, that requires a wide variety of different options to play a game. There's also a good opportunity to port that game to the Switch, which makes a lot of sense. Melody of Memory did well enough. The Kingdom Hearts fan base community is large. And if they were to announce tomorrow that Kingdom Hearts 1, 2, 3, the spin-offs were coming to the Nintendo Switch, I think the best way to do that first would be to announce that Sora is coming to Smash. And I think Sora deserves a spot in Smash. I think Crash deserves a spot more. I firmly believe Crash deserves a spot more. But I think Nintendo has been more in the market of what can we do that makes the most sense from a promotional standpoint than anything else. So if they do end up announcing Kingdom Hearts for Switch tomorrow, which I have a weird feeling they're going to, I think we're going to see Sora as the main announcement. That's my theory.
Now, you know, from my official predictions video that I did a ways back before we knew what any of these characters were, I did predict that Sora was going to be one of the last six. And the reason I thought that was because of how impossible he seems.
Yeah.
And Mr. Sakurai's track record of achieving the impossible. What made me back off that a little bit is Sephiroth. And
so much Square Enix representation.
Yeah, while one might think that Sephiroth would actually serve as an example of a deepening relationship with Square Enix and perhaps increase the likeliness that they'd be able to come up with some contractual resolution that would allow for Sora to be into the game, that would be 2 Square reps in the same Fighters Pass.
And in a row.
That's not even with – and in a row. And that's the Disney thing notwithstanding. I do think you could circumvent
You're poking
Disney,
holes in my argument, man. But
I like where you're going with this. I'm just trying to present the counterpoint. That's at least why I've personally backed away from Sora. Although I think, as you do, that he deserves to be in the game. I think that his game series, like Crash's, has a long-standing legacy. It does have a lot of dedicated fans.
Yeah.
Every one of these games, Kingdom Hearts titles, is an event when it releases. It's a big deal. I don't know anything about how popular they actually are in terms of sales. I know they're super popular in terms of the internet. And at least in the circles that I follow, even though I don't play the games, they're all that's talked about.
They sell well enough, but keep in mind, too, they go on clearance very quickly. You can get Kingdom Hearts 3 for like $10, which is, you would never see that with a Mario game ever.
Right.
Even the worst type of Mario game you can imagine, Nintendo would keep that $60 price tag for eternity.
Now, do you think that there's anything to wanting characters that fit a certain archetype, like brawlers or sword fighters? Or
back in the day, maybe, when Sakurai was running the show with the DLC fighters. And this is going to be my one only tangent on this, where Nintendo has taken the reins from Sakurai and moved the DLC options and the character selection from one passionate individual to a corporate decision. So I feel like they're going to shoehorn in who they need to shoehorn in to meet financial obligations or to... from what I've read, I can't remember if I talked to you about this, but somebody said that one of the reasons why Sephiroth was picked because he was cheap.
I can't imagine he was cheap, though, because...
Where Square was just like, please use him. We could use it for the promotion. I swear, somebody in the comments can tell me if I'm nuts. I very, very clearly remember reading that somewhere.
Now, what I really love about these Sakurai Presents that they have been doing with all these DLC characters is he offers a lot of kind of trivia insight into how some of these characters come about, which we have never gotten before. And, of course, everyone was very curious about when Cloud was first announced, why he only had like a music track and no additional spirit. And so in this most recent Sephiroth one, he explained that music licensing for these is very tricky because it's owned by different companies in different territories. So maybe whoever owns the music stateside or whoever owns it in Germany, whoever owns it in Japan, you have to license it through all of these different companies. So I have to imagine that music alone made Sephiroth pretty pricey.
I guess it depends on if Square owned those music tracks specifically. One thing was odd. When I went and I looked in the credits for the music, I didn't see Nobuo Uematsu's name anywhere on there. I was expecting to see Nobuo Uematsu at least under composer, or I don't think he owns anything. But part of me wonders if maybe Square
gets a cut of
Square picked the music tracks that were 100% in their wheelhouse. They could do whatever they wanted with them. And back when Cloud came out, maybe they were less inclined to do it because, number one, Final Fantasy VII, nothing was really happening at that point. And number two, it was the Wii U. Like, 10 people owned it.
Yeah.
That's
an interesting thing to consider, that maybe one of the biggest problems that a character might have is actually their music, because that's not something that we ever see. We see on the final end, but Nintendo made 3 promises with each character. We're going to give you a new character, we are going to give you new music, and we are going to give you a new stage. Nintendo can control 2 of those, oddly, a lot better than the third pillar being the sound. I went to school for film, and invariably, on almost every single project we did, music licensing was one of the most challenging contractually, because you don't just need the rights, you need the re-recording rights.
Yeah.
So you actually kind of have to pay 2 people to use the music, or two parties at least, and how they break down that pricing structure can be even more complicated. It's not like this wealth of royalty-free stuff that we can use. We want to hear specific tracks. You want to hear One Wing Angel.
Yeah.
So you pay the price for One Wing Angel. One of the most famous Hollywood examples is I Am Iron Man for the Iron Man movie. One of my sword fighting students owned this Viking metal music company where they kind of controlled the rights to a ton of Viking metal style songs, and a lot of them sounded like I Am Iron Man. So they
that
were
got
in
picked up by
negotiations.
YouTube?
No, they were in negotiations with Marvel to come up with a track because they didn't want to pay what it would cost to get I Am Iron Man. And then finally at the end they're like, we'll just pay it. We'll just pay it.
Yeah.
And it probably worked in their case, but they paid through the nose just to use that one song. So it makes me wonder if that's a consideration when determining a character. Can we get the music for this to make it worth the sales price? Not everyone can be SNK where they're like, sure, have our whole catalog. Yeah. Just take it. Take all this amazing music.
I do think that your point, though, for Sephiroth being the last fighter is probably the strongest point against Sora, where 2 Square Enix nods in one go is kind of tough. 2 RPG characters in one go would be tough if you're trying to diversify it. But I do think it's going to be Sora, or I think Crash would be the other logical choice. I still firmly believe that Waluigi is coming. Is he coming tomorrow? I don't know. If he was coming, you would imagine they would have done it during the 35th anniversary Mario celebration. Like, not right when it ended.
I'm not as confident as you are about it.
With Waluigi?
Yeah. I want Waluigi. He feels like a missing piece. He feels like a missing piece to this configuration, but I'm not really even sure that Ultimate is going to be his time. It has nothing to do with him being an assist trophy. We've already seen proof that
doesn't matter.
Sakurai doesn't care about that. He doesn't care about that stuff. You can be an assist trophy. You could be a character. You could be a spirit. You could be a character. But the thing is, I don't know that he's been legitimized in the eyes of Sakurai, and I don't know that Nintendo thinks that he's going to contribute to the overall bottom line of sales.
He would be trending for at least a week on Twitter.
Like at least on Twitter. I don't know how much Twitter is reflective of game sales.
The YouTube content would be nuts. The Twitter content would be nuts.
Absolutely.
But part of me wonders if the publicity they would get from it would be overtly negative. Because number one, Waluigi's a meme character, which is
he's a meme machine.
Tough to begin with.
That's for sure.
And there's some very not Nintendo-friendly memes out there of our good friend Waluigi. So it's definitely a tough one.
Not Nintendo-friendly memes of every character.
He deserves a spot, though, more than anybody else on the list.
100% agree.
So, any other Hail Marys before we move on to something else?
I'm just going to throw this out there because I think it's time. We still don't have a Ubisoft rep, and Nintendo has... They've been one of Nintendo's most faithful allies, especially all through that Wii U era. And
not a rabbit.
If I had to pick, oh please, God no. If I had to pick who I thought was most appropriate, I'd go with Rayman. Although I don't really
I agree.
Know sales there.
Rayman makes a lot of sense. So unfortunately, so does like a Rabid rep. Altair made a lot of sense too until they made him a costume.
Yes, which I think kind of sours his chances a little bit.
Yeah, I think so too. I think it destroys his chances, to be honest.
But going slightly back to the archetype thing, if we look at the previous Fighters Pass, you've got like kind of a strange character in the form of Joker. Not that he's strange, but he plays a little bit different than everybody else. And then you got Hero, who is pretty much as archetypal sword fighter as you get. Then you've got an anthropomorphic animal. And I feel like we're due for the anthropomorphic animal. I think there has to be at least one in this Fighters Pass. We have no cartoon character. No character.
Conquer, baby.
Conquer.
That would be another Microsoft rep, though, which would be super tough to pull off.
Even though Banjo is a Microsoft rep technically, I think he's still, in his Smash capacity, a Nintendo rep.
I agree.
Like the way that we think about him, we is from a mindset kind of thing is as a Nintendo character, even though he's owned by Microsoft. I think that's just a hoop they jumped through to get this Nintendo character into Smash Brothers.
If it turns out to be Conker, though, I will do something so extraordinary I don't even know. Conker is my most wanted fighter. I've already lost faith. Once they announced Banjo, I'm like, Conker's done. It's not going to happen. But I have like
any world where that happens.
I have a Conker statue up there. You might be able to see it. Like I am obsessed with that guy. He is. I think the reason why is he was the first adult Nintendo video game character that I knew of, and there was something just taboo about it.
Yeah.
And I loved every second of it. It's one of the reasons why I think Conker is still great. Now it's so common nowadays for a very cute character to be vulgar. And I think Conker helped blaze that trail to a certain degree.
I think you're right.
He's not obviously the first, but I think he definitely helped blaze it.
Now, do you think that there is any outside chance for content being revealed that's not a character? Like a new mode? I know Mr. Sakurai said we're done with new modes, but
they wouldn't mention it in the tweet if they weren't going to do a character. You're completely right on that point. The negative publicity, why would they point that out if they're just going to say, oh, we're going to add this thing that nobody cares about, or a new photo mode, or Labo VR support, which I think they already did.
Yeah, they did. Which I haven't tried yet.
I would say that the chances of that are zero.
Okay. Well, what about in addition to a character?
In addition, you want to know what I think would make the most sense? Smash chess mode.
Smash chess mode is so obvious and so simple.
So there's 156 of you watching this right now. There is a show on this channel. You might have seen it. You might not have. It's called Smash Chess. TJ put out 3 episodes of it. I think they average about 1,000,005 views, something like that. And every single video that I put out, there's at least one comment that says, bring back Smash Chess. Bring it back. But the idea of Smash Chess, I'm going to let you describe what that is and let the good folks at home decide if it makes sense in Smash, because I think it does. I really do.
I thought it made sense. And in every single one of those videos, there's a handful of people who ask me how to access that mode because they want to play it. It looks fun. Now, full disclosure, I created the mode in Adobe After Effects and I facilitated it with motion graphics. So it does not exist in Smash Brothers, but I used Smash Brothers to do it. And so the basic premise is all of the spots are occupied by a Smash Brothers character, but instead of capturing a space, you have to fight for it. You have to settle it in Smash. So like, let's say a pawn tries to take another pawn. In regular chess, if it's your turn and it's your move, you can just capture the spot. But in Smash, you have to challenge the person or the character or the piece rather that's currently occupying that space, and the winner gets to keep it. And I just think it's such a fun little way to punch up a classic game that a lot of people really know and enjoy. So simple, so easy, wouldn't cost them a thing. And they already have modes in the game that are kind of similar to that. This is something you could easily play online with somebody. It's a closed game. It would be such a fun little thing to do. I would love to play Smash Chess with people all over the world.
That honestly, that's still my choice for mode. I think it would be great. Oh, real quick, I need to point out Brian Lloyd, new member. Thank you for joining the channel.
Welcome, Brian.
I'm planning on doing more things with the emojis for the channel subscribers, so stay tuned for that. We don't have too many right now, so if anybody else wants to join, feel free. But thank you, Brian. That's awesome. Okay, let's move on to Zelda 35.
Yes.
And this is something that I'm on the fence if we're going to see tomorrow. I think we will. I think it makes a lot of sense for that to happen.
Yeah.
But we just kind of finalized everything with Mario's 35th anniversary. Mario 3D World plus Bowser's Fury just came out, which I personally loved. I beat Bowser's Fury mode. I think it's great. So now we're on to Zelda, and the 35th anniversary is next week. And I think this lines up pretty perfectly with that. So either A, Nintendo's going to announce a bunch of Zelda stuff tomorrow, or B, at the end they're going to say, hey, we have a dedicated Zelda Direct coming next week. And I could honestly see either one of those two things happening. But I'm curious what your thought is on what might happen tomorrow with that.
Given the length is 50 minutes, that's a lot of content for them to be delivering. I don't expect another Direct anytime soon. Nintendo keeps Pokemon and their regular Directs pretty separate for the most part, but it's also Zelda's 25th anniversary and
30.
I'm sorry. It's also Pokemon's 25th anniversary.
Yeah.
And so if they're going to try to allocate some of that time to Pokemon and then do their own thing with Zelda, I think it's more likely that we see the Zelda stuff in this general Direct, and it's the 25th anniversary Pokemon stuff that would be a separate Direct, because there's a whole nother team that handles that kind of stuff that allows them to be able to allocate resources in different directions. But Zelda should be in this one.
50 minutes is a long time, too. So I would imagine that we would see quite a bit of that, especially if they're covering the first half of the year. There's only so much I feel like they're going to announce for the first half of the year.
And the only thing we know for sure that's coming, and we don't even know for sure if it's coming this year, is Zelda 2, or Breath of the Wild 2. I do think it's coming this year, and I wouldn't be overly surprised if it came out first quarter. The original Breath of the Wild came out first quarter, but
that was also a launch title.
A launch game.
Yeah.
It's also a launch game. I think it's probably very well positioned to be a holiday title. But then again, I don't know. I could see it being March, and I could see it being November.
I see it much more being
terribly
November.
Surprise me.
I feel like if it was March, we would have a gameplay trailer by now. We would have a name of the game by now. Pre-orders, I would imagine, would be up by now if it's going to come out in a month. Yeah, especially for a game like this.
They want to hype it up, and if they give us like a good 6-month hype cycle, maybe this would be more of an summer type announcement.
Yeah.
Because they give us a summer announcement, they release it over the holiday. Or maybe this is the time to see that trailer. I mean, it's probably due for some more information on Zelda 2.
Yeah.
I keep saying Zelda 2, forgive me. I know it's Breath of the Wild 2.
I mean, it could be that. I mean, it could be anything.
I wouldn't turn down a remade Zelda 2. I think that's one.
I think we talked about that once before.
I want it. I want that game bad. So Breath of the Wild 2 information tomorrow, probably. Mention, I would say definitely.
Yeah.
Because it's one of the big things looming that we know is coming, that we have heard scant about. We've had one trailer and then a slight mention in the announcement for Age of Calamity.
Yeah.
So we're long overdue for some information about this game, and I think there's a good chance that a nice 5 to 10 minute chunk of that 50 minutes could just be kind of bringing us up to date, maybe even giving us a release date.
I see it as a name drop only. That's it. I see us getting a name drop. It's going to be a title screen. It's going to be like the one last thing at the very end of the video. It's going to be coming holiday 2021. It's going to be the name of the game, maybe a single screenshot, something that fades in very quickly, and that's what I see them doing with it.
That would be enough to make the hair on the back of my neck stand up.
Oh, I'm sure it will. So besides that, we have, what else? I mean, obviously with Zelda 35, it makes sense that they would go the Mario All-Stars direction and release games that came out on other systems. So you have Wind Waker, and you have Skyward Sword, Wind Waker, and Twilight Princess HD.
Those are the obvious two, because Nintendo could probably very easily just update them for Switch. They're both made for the Wii U, and even though they had specific touchscreen, dual screen interactivity,
yeah,
it's not a hard thing, I imagine, to take those games and put them on Switch. Certainly much easier than just about any other game in the Zelda catalog. of the 3D Zelda games.
And I don't think there's anything touchscreen related that's mandatory in
Just
either of those
better
games.
menu.
You can
Yeah,
play
better
on
menu
just
access.
the gamepad and swap between the inventory screens pretty easily.
Right.
So yeah, I don't see that being an issue. I think it makes sense we're going to get both of those announcements starting tomorrow. The long rumored Skyward Sword remake slash redo slash I have no idea how they're going to implement that on the Switch without the Wiimote.
Yeah.
I could see that coming tomorrow as well.
I I wouldn't put money on any of those three coming out, although none of those three would surprise me. I just don't really know what direction they're going to go with this because we're in unusual territory with Zelda now. This is the first time ever that Nintendo's had one unified platform where they're not making it for a handheld device and they're not making it for a console. They're not trying to appease. Well, I'm not saying appease. They're not trying to service two separate markets that may have overlap and may not. The people who are going to play this portably are also the same people who are going to play it on console. And in a lot of ways, it creates an interesting position for Zelda where we used to have these are the type of Zelda games that you get on the portable, and these are the types of Zelda games that you get on a console. And we've already had some overlap with that. We had Link's Awakening remake, so we've got the potential for a completely overhauled remake, as we've seen those. We've got the potential for an updated HD remake. We've already seen those, so there's the potential for that. And there's also the possibility of some kind of new Zelda experience that we haven't yet had that is different from Breath of the Wild 2, but is also a new entry, kind of like Triforce Heroes or one of these other experimental games that they have, because we've lost that pillar of that platform.
Yeah.
And so whatever team was working on those games is working on something. I have to imagine it's a Zelda something. They're not going to be working on a remake because they usually outsource that to other companies. And I kind of hope we get something like that. But how much Zelda is too much Zelda? They want a Zelda thing a year, and they've kind of maintained that. But at what point does it reach the breaking point where we've had too many Zelda games?
I mean, how
For
much
me,
Mario is too much Mario?
Zero. I think they ask themselves that question.
Because last year was 3 games on one day plus another. I mean, all of them remakes, or not even remakes, just remasters. Barely even remasters, to be honest. And then another re-release of another game.
Even though the games that are part of the All-Stars pack are 3 separate games, I think that's one game.
So
because that
potentially, though, we could see the same thing with Zelda.
Yes.
Which either we would see all the most up-to-date 3D games, so like the Skyward Sword, Wind Waker, and Twilight Princess on one SKU. Even though I think Nintendo would try to piece that out more to make more money, personally.
I think Skyward Sword would not be included. I think it would be
that would be the 3D
thing.
The 3D world to this particular package where it would be separate. I do see my other theory is this, and it's again something it's a theory, but at the same time too I want it to happen more than anything else on this list. And that would be taking the 3DS versions of Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask and making them HD, which is incredible.
That would be the best.
And this is something that isn't difficult to do from what I've seen. There is something that came out about, I think, 2 weeks ago, where somebody took an emulated copy of Ocarina of Time and they made 4K assets for it. And there is now a 4K playable version of Ocarina of Time. Not upscaled, not like AI controlled upscaling stuff. I mean, they actually made 4K textures for hundreds and hundreds of different items for this game. One guy.
It's definitely an inevitability because Ocarina of Time is an evergreen title. It is kind of the prototypical Zelda game. All of the games that came before led up to that game experience. It has everything in it that makes a Zelda game a Zelda game.
Yeah.
And almost everything that's different than Ocarina of Time is a divergent from what makes a Zelda game a Zelda game. So this is a title that whenever they feel like it, they can release a new version of it and it will be successful. Is it time to make it again and put it as a console title again for Nintendo Switch? In my opinion, yes.
It's been 11 years.
It's been 11 years since the 3DS version.
Which is mind-blowing, by the way, to think about.
Which is mind-blowing. I think it is time. What would frustrate me about this is if they did something kind of like, and it would frustrate me more than it did with Mario, is if they make a 3D All-Stars and they do like Ocarina of Time, Wind Waker, and Twilight Princess. That would be obnoxious to me.
Especially if they just gave you the bare bones, like no widescreen support, like what they did with Mario 64, knowing full well that the fan community made a much better version of their own game.
Yeah. To my great shame, I would buy it, and it's not teaching Nintendo in any way that they have to put effort in for me to want to buy it. But leaving out Majora's Mask out of that configuration would be a lot more frustrating to me than leaving out Super Mario Galaxy 2, which did bother me. Like something about that bugs me. It just feels like calling it a collection. They should have called it the 3D Incomplete Collection.
I still think it's coming at some point.
It probably is, but it would have been much better if it was in that pack.
Yeah, I agree.
And not just for value's sake. If they wanted to charge more and add the other game, fine. But I feel like leaving out critical titles that have strong connectivity, like Majora's Mask and Ocarina of Time. I would rather, honestly, and I know a lot of people probably not be in the same camp as this, get just a 2-pack that have Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask that are based on the 3DS versions.
Agreed.
Than to get Wind Waker and Twilight Princess, because we have had them very recently, as recent as the last console generation. And I would rather have them than Skyward Sword. Not because I like them better, but I feel like it's been so much longer that it's time. If we're going to be remaking stuff, if we're going to be rehashing stuff, those are the ones that I'd like to get.
I mean, it's
unless
tough
we're going to
because
go way back.
I don't see 5 old Zelda games coming out at once.
I agree.
So I can see 4 max. We're probably going to get less. I'm trying to subdue my expectations a bit here, because I don't want to get overly disappointed if we don't get anything Zelda related tomorrow.
Right.
I can't imagine what happened, but I agree with you that I think what would make me the most happy, and I think a lot of other people, would be dedicated versions of the 3DS, Ocarina of Time, and Majora's Mask. And I specify the 3DS versions because the quality of life improvements are massive. Mm-hmm. So that's my thoughts on that. What other Zelda stuff do you think could potentially happen? Anything else on that front?
I do think that we're going to see, maybe not to the same scale as Mario, but a lot of ancillary merchandise. Maybe there'll be some impossible to collect pins that will bother me more for Zelda than it did for Mario. There'll probably be maybe some physical products made available. I think it's all going to center around the games, though. And even though they may create a collection, I think it's going to be at max 3 releases. Now, it's not necessarily 3 games, because they could lump a few together like they did with Mario. But if one of those is going to be Breath of the Wild 2, which it isn't guaranteed, I could also see it as March next year with a pro version of the Switch. But I do think one of those 3 is going to be Breath of the Wild 2, which means there's probably only going to be 2 other Zelda-related games within this year. Just like we got 3 more Smash characters, that's going to be spaced out pretty nicely, because they're not going to put 2 games too close together.
Yeah. I do have one other theory as far as how they could do it. And if I'm right on this one, man, I'm never right, so it doesn't matter.
It'll go right down in history with Bayonetta. Smash.
And that would be Nintendo announces a secondary tier of Nintendo Switch Online, more expensive. And included in that tier would be access to Nintendo 64 games, and those 64 games would include Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask. The N64 version's pretty bare bones. That would be their way.
Wild.
What?
That's not wild. I actually think that that's a really good idea. Maybe it's too good, so it won't happen. But
But I see N64 games getting announced to a certain degree tomorrow anyway. There's been rumors that Nintendo wants to amp up their Nintendo Switch Online platform to a bit. They're moving away from their old servers, which apparently were pretty darn old.
yeah, I saw
So they're
that.
trying to improve their online experience. That costs money. Nintendo Switch Online is already the cheapest game in pretty much out there. Like if you want to get an online service, it's what, $5 a month tops.
Yeah, and it offers the least value by far too. So
Yeah, I
it needs
mean,
to
you
be.
can only get so much enjoyment out of those NES and Super NES games for sure. But I could see a premium tier showing up. Nintendo wanting to compete with PS Plus. Maybe throw some indie games on there too. You got
I
all
don't
those
think that they
indies.
can mess with the price structure because I already think a lot of people question its value. Right now, it's really just so that people can play Animal Crossing online with their friends.
If they announce like a selection of 30 or let's say 20 first party N64 games, people would line up to pay for it.
I think the people that would line up to pay for it are already paying for it. I don't think it would bring in anybody new.
I think you get people upgrading their membership to something more expensive.
Oh, yeah, I
And
don't
it also
know.
depends too on what other value they could potentially add to that too.
I think that they're locked into that price structure because they have not proven that they can handle online capably. So it's kind of a joke. And if they raise the price, all it will do is draw attention to how poor the online is.
They're a business. They're going to make their money, but we'll
I don't
see.
know.
We'll
I
see.
think that might actually lose some subscribers if they do something like that.
We'll find out. You're
I'm one of the
probably
dumb,
right. Again, my
dumb
track record
schlubs.
for being right on any of my big predictions is like close to zero.
The idea is great. I don't personally see them in a position to be able to raise the price
I feel
because
you.
the internet has long been not their strong suit, and they are aware of that. Uh, so
So that's
I
why they're
don't.
going to do it.
Yeah.
You've made my case for why they're going to do it anyway.
So how about this? Will we see Zelda Amiibo?
Um, it's tough because maybe for Breath of the Wild 2, there's not a lot left. Zelda 2 would make a really cool dedicated amiibo. Some of the artwork for Zelda 2 is amazing. A
Are
Link
you
to the
talking about the
Past.
original one or Breath of the Wild?
No, I'm talking the original Zelda 2.
Oh, yeah,
Like,
that
there's
would be
some
pretty
really
sweet.
awesome artwork for that game that I think would make it like a fantastic amiibo.
So if in the same vein as the 30th anniversary line, they filled in some of those gaps
Yeah,
with a 35th anniversary line. Oh, I had not even considered that as a
but
possibility,
I feel
and
like there's
now I
not
want it
enough.
so bad.
I mean, we have so
There's
many,
enough. There's enough.
but I
There
mean, we got
totally
Cat
is.
Mario and Cat Peach. I mean, they did we need another Mario? Really? But there's more Link
Yeah,
than there
because
is
this one's in a
Mario.
catsuit. Yeah, because Mario's Mario in every game, but in a lot of Legend of Zelda games, we
Yeah,
have a new Link that's associated with, in a lot of ways, a new look, a new enough look where we could get all these different amiibo. We got one from Skyward Sword and Twilight Princess and Ocarina of Time, and all of those costumes are super similar. But we don't have one from Zelda 2 or A Link to the Past or most of the handheld games.
yeah.
So we didn't get one for the story of our. Why am I drawing a blank at the Ages and Oracles game? But we don't have Oracle or Oracle of Ages, Oracle of Seasons. There we
Yep.
go. We don't have one for those two. That took me a while, but I got there.
If if we got new amiibo, my thought would be we would get updated versions of Link, Zelda, and Ganondorf for the Smash series as a player too. I think that
I
would make
would
the most
love
sense.
that.
I think a lot of them would sell. Zelda's new look's amazing. I would
Yeah.
love an old school Ganondorf looking amiibo.
Same. We just have that one Smash 4 Ganondorf, surprisingly,
He's
even though we
okay.
have all.
He doesn't look as
He's
cool as,
good.
as
I
Ocarina of
like
Time
him.
Ganondorf though. He just doesn't.
I like him more personally, but I still want both. I don't think that that's going to happen because even though Mr. Sakurai is well known for wanting to troll people, he did specifically say it would be nice, but it's not going to happen. Could be a troll.
Could be.
Could be to get us off the scent, but I don't think so. I think if there's any chance of us getting Zelda Amiibo, it's going to be related to Breath of the Wild 2.
I agree. I think that makes the most sense. And Zelda looks like she's going to be a much more pivotal part of the game. And her outfit looks pretty great in the trailer, too. So
Yeah.
bring it
And
on.
short-haired Zelda is, I think, a significant enough difference where if they want to make another Zelda Amiibo where she's perhaps dressed similarly, but that changes her look enough if they put her in a different pose. It's more than just a newly painted variant.
Yeah.
I would buy that. Link, I don't even care what they do. I just want another one. And I definitely, if Ganon is in this game, or Ganondorf's in this game in some capacity, and I think it's highly likely that as people are speculating that dried up husk is Ganondorf, I want an amiibo of that. I want it.
If
Not
not, you can make
necessarily
one.
the husk. That's fine. Yeah, but not everyone has that option. So
Your custom amiibo are just insane, though. So you still the Dark Link that I picked up from you is still like my favorite amiibo ever. I gotta show the people. I gotta show the people your work.
well, the fact that there were so many Zelda custom amiibo that I could make proves that there's so many that Nintendo could still do. Yeah, Nintendo hasn't done any Dark Link, have they?
Like this is you used an Ocarina of Time Link amiibo for this, right?
Yeah.
This looks legit. This does not look like a custom figure. That's
Thanks.
the quality of your work, sir. So
You are too kind. Too kind.
that was a shameless plug for Custom Conquest.
Yeah. Check it out.
I mean, let's quickly touch base. We have about 12 minutes left. Let's quickly touch base on the other anniversaries this year. It's 35th for Metroid, right?
Yep, because Kid Icarus, Zelda, and Metroid all released in the same year on the original NES.
Yep. So you have those.
So
Kid Icarus,
and
Metroid.
Metroid will go 100% unmentioned. They're not even going to acknowledge unacknowledged anniversaries.
I could
because
totally see
they
Metroid
have
Prime
never
Trilogy
announced them.
finally getting announced tomorrow.
I could see Metroid Prime Trilogy getting announced at any time because it never doesn't make sense.
That's true.
There has never been a time when it didn't make sense to drop that. Is Metroid's 35th anniversary a good enough reason? Why not? There's no reason not to put those games out. I'd be very surprised if they even made the least bit of mention of that. I think Zelda will be the big celebration this year, and also Pokemon. I don't think that there's any room for a little globe-trotting bounty hunter like Samus. And
That's
certainly
heartbreaking.
not a little
I
angel
think
like
there
Pit.
is. I personally think there is. It's a very different genre. Mario
It
platformer, adventure game with the Zelda, first-person shooter for whatever Metroid Prime 4 is going to
It
end up
is.
being called.
I just don't see Nintendo changing their stripes on that. The Zelda is so big; it's become such a behemoth, and it's now reached unprecedented levels of sales.
Yeah.
It's like Breath of the Wild alone has almost sold the same as all the other Zelda games combined. It's a really, really, really successful title, and I think kind of changed the way that Nintendo thinks about Zelda. But Samus really does not sell well. I think it's unfortunate because there are a lot of dedicated Metroid fans, and even though I, for whatever reason, can't really get into the games, I certainly respect the genre, and this genre has been incredibly influential and given me a lot of other games that I super love, like Hollow Knight, even though that's more based on classic Metroid than the Prime series. But we got Prime 4 coming out at some time, and you would think that Nintendo would want to give people the opportunity to play these games on the Switch when they came out before most of its potential audience has even been born.
I mean, you'd think so.
You'd think so. Maybe they're just trying to strategically time it to be close enough to Metroid Prime 4's release. That's all I can imagine.
Yeah.
Is that they don't want it to be so far away that people forget. It's just enough to give people time to get updated, but not so much time that it falls out of their frontal cortex.
So we also have Donkey Kong celebrating its 40th anniversary this year.
Yeah.
I see nothing happening for that.
I do too,
Maybe a
but
nod or a mention, but I think that's
man,
about it.
if we could get another, I would be happy if we even got Donkey Kong Returns ported to the Switch.
Yeah.
That's a fantastic game, forever trapped on the Wii, and I think it
3DS.
also got ported to 3DS. But I would love to have that on Switch because I couldn't play with my kids. I want to play with my kids.
Makes sense.
It would be nice. I don't see that happening either. I would really love a new Donkey Kong. That would be phenomenal. It is time. We're overdue, frankly, in my opinion, for a new Donkey Kong. But I really don't know how much more could get in there. But there are things that we know they're going to mention that have already been announced, like Bravely Default 2 will probably eat up a tragically large portion of this.
Wouldn't that be a disappointment?
It's going to happen. I think 10 minutes of this thing is going to be Bravely Default 2, unfortunately. And then also we know about Pokemon Snap coming. They'll definitely dive into that.
Part of me wonders if they are. Part of me wonders if I think there's going to be a dedicated Pokemon Direct at some point. I do think at the end of this Direct, we're going to get at least an announcement for something else. They're going to say, stay tuned next week for another one, for Zelda, or for whatever. Who knows?
Yeah, man, if they did a whole nother... I'm sure there'll be a lot of Pokemon stuff throughout the year. If we got a dedicated Zelda Direct, I'd be surprised if it was soon. But I think this might be the last time we hear from Nintendo in any major capacity for the next 6 months. So
that's depressing.
I don't think we're going to hear another thing till the end of June. So I hope that they put a lot of really exciting titles in here for me to look forward to.
Yeah.
One a month seems like the right recipe for success. That's kind of what they've been trying to do, is give you like one big thing to look forward to every month. As according to my personal taste, it works out to be maybe bi-monthly. One of them appeals to me because I'm not into the Xenoblades or the Bravely Defaults.
Yeah.
So those ones I usually skip. But all the major big Nintendo stuff, I'm down for. Do you think, after last year's celebration of Mario, that we've seen the last of Mario games for at least one calendar year?
I think that's about right. I think Bowser's Fury was a fantastic send-off to the entire year of Mario.
Yeah.
Nintendo did some very innovative things with that. I could spend an hour talking about what they did. But they made an open world 3D Mario game. It was a relatively small open world, but it was an open world 3D Mario game. And it showcased mechanics that I never knew I wanted in a Mario game. I enjoyed it thoroughly. And I hope what Nintendo showed with that is a taste of what they're developing.
Yeah. And I hope it's not limited to Mario either, because we've seen some of the elements that they put into that game already in other games, like Luigi in Luigi's Mansion and Cappy in Mario Odyssey. But I think Bowser Jr. was a lot more fun than Cappy was. And maybe not as refined or nuanced as Luigi.
Yeah.
But something like Wolf Link, although could be played by a second player, I hope something like that bleeds into Breath of the Wild, to be honest. I would really like to be able to have unprecedented in that series history, be able to have a second player come in and play in a lesser capacity than the dominant player or the primary player, but at least be able to make meaningful contributions and turn that into an experience that can be shared, which would be really a first. They've tried to make multiplayer Zelda things before, and each of them always had some kind of significant barrier of entry.
Yeah, and it's tough though, because there's a lot of people that want that dedicated single player experience, and you'd have to rely on AI for that. I mean, Uncharted, I think, is a good example of a game that did it well, where a majority of the game was played in the single person perspective, but they also had AI puzzles where you had to work with partner to get things done. So, I mean, it's totally doable. But I think if you only have one person playing and then the computer just does everything that the other person was supposed to do, it kind of limits what you can do to a certain degree without making it like a mandatory two-player experience. Like Triforce Heroes is kind of an example of that, where you had to play with other people.
Yeah, and that kind of killed that game because you had to play with two other people. And it was hard for me to find other adults
Yeah.
that want two other adults. I could like kind of beg my wife to play it with me, but then you cannot in any way play that game 2-player. So making it 3-player was really just kind of what prevented me from being able to experience it as it was intended. But Nintendo, I think, already figured this out. Like Luigi is completely optional. He could come in and out as you need him as you need him. You don't need a second player and you don't need AI because you're controlling him the whole time. And they kind of did a similar thing with Zelda in Spirit Tracks. So you do play as Link and Zelda.
Yeah.
And they did a similar thing with Wolf Link, except instead of it being controlled by a second player, it was controlled by an optional AI amiibo. But you could bring him in or out as you needed. And if Bowser Jr. was like that, like maybe something where you could opt in or opt out. Obviously, it works for him to always be present in Bowser's Fury. But if Zelda were to try to, in some ways, utilize that mechanic for co-op, I think there are ways to circumvent it being a problem, make you too dedicated to AI, too reliant on the AI.
I still think it's going to be a long shot for Zelda, for Breath of the Wild 2 to get any meaningful coverage tomorrow, but I'm crossing my fingers. Before we go, though, let's hear your Hail Mary guess for what we could possibly see tomorrow. Your craziest off-the-wall hopes and dreams for what you want to see tomorrow.
All right. Well, we've already talked about... I'm a pretty simple Nintendo man. I like my Smash. I like my Zelda.
I'm a simple Nintendo man.
So this already promises to be a really good year for me. If I had to say something that I think is highly unlikely, but that I would really want to see, I'm echoing a sentiment I've said in the past, but what I really want is a 2D Legend of Zelda action platformer. We haven't had something the likes of that since Zelda 2, and Zelda 2 only was a half measure of this. And I think at that time they were still kind of testing out what Zelda was, because it wasn't really definitively established as any one type of game. There were only 2 games. So if we could get something like that, kind of in the vein of a Hollow Knight or an Ori,
you want a Metroidvania, but with Zelda.
It doesn't necessarily need to be Metroidvania. It could be linear. I'd probably be just as happy with it being linear. Travel from left to right. That would be okay. But I love the way that Link controls in 2 dimensions in Smash Brothers. So if I could have like something like that, where I would also like the usual pattern of Zelda where you increase your abilities as time goes on, and that will aid in your traversal in this 2D platforming environment. But it's the kind of game that lends itself well, I think, to Zelda, even though it's not what we think about when we think of Zelda. So it may be something we never get, but I can see how fun it would be for me. So it's kind of the thing that I'm really wanting.
For me, it would be, I have 2 things. Switch Pro. It's not going to happen, but Switch Pro. I want it. Yep. We need it. We need it.
We need it.
We need it. There are games that I have played that would have majorly benefited from added hardware, and it's been 4 years. I think it's about time for a hardware revision, personally. If we don't get that, which I'm guessing we won't.
Nintendo obviously doesn't, and sales figures would indicate that they're probably right.
You're right. I mean, I can't argue with that. I can't argue with that.
But I agree. I agree with everything you're saying. It just doesn't make any financial sense for them to do it.
Nintendo has put some of their heaviest hitters on the Switch already. You have your Animal Crossings, pretty much every Mario you can imagine. We're about to get a crap ton of Zelda.
I hope.
I feel like there's only so much further we can go, and as hardware gets more advanced, we're not going to be able to get... what's that name of the company that was porting all of Bethesda's stuff? Panic Button. Panic Button's not going to be able to like start porting over these PS5, Xbox Series X games anymore.
They're already wizards, but they're not deities.
Doom Eternal was a masterpiece for what they were able to bring onto the Switch, but with a little bit more horsepower, it would have been much better. If we don't get that, which I'm sure we're not going to get that, I would love a Legend of Zelda themed Nintendo Switch system. a Pro
Oh,
controller.
yes. Oh, I would buy it in a second. I don't need it at all. I don't want a Pro controller, but if it was gold and it was Zelda themed, I'd buy it.
That's my only hope, is that it's not gold. I
I
don't
hope
want
it
it
is
gold.
gold. I need it. I need it gold. What would you want it to be?
Not gold. Anything
Well,
but I'm sick.
what would be the
Everything is.
alternative?
So here, hang on. Let me prove my point here. You got the gold DS.
Yep.
You got the gold. Where's my SP? Oh, there's so many in here. You got the gold SP. You got the gold 3DS. I mean, they rely so much on the gold color.
Yeah, but the only one that was not gold was the Wii U and 3DS, and they're by far the worst ones.
And the 2D, the 2DS XL.
Like gold is where it is at, man.
So anything but gold, and I'd be thrilled.
Those classic gold cartridges from the original NES told you this is not an ordinary game. This game is an event. There is something special. This game is the literal gold standard, and they've lived up to that.
You can do a hint of gold. A hint. Make the gold Triforce. That's good enough.
No, man. I want the whole thing to be gold, and I want the whole Switch console to be gold. You could put like a beveled Triforce in it, but nothing but gold. Just like that classic cartridge. I'll buy it in a second.
I mean,
Actually,
I'd buy it anyway, no matter what at this point.
Not,
so,
like, if they do a version that's kind of like the Smash Brothers one,
yeah,
where it's just this monochromatic gray on black, forget that. I don't need that. Even if they put a cool Zelda pattern or a cool Triforce pattern, I don't need that. You make some gold Joy-Cons, a gold dock, and a gold Switch, I can't resist. Especially you put some kind of Triforce on
so
there.
gaudy. So gaudy.
It's so gaudy, but it screams Zelda. And that's why. I'm not a gold fan. I don't wear gold. I don't wear jewelry at all. I don't. But in fact, I hate jewelry. But something about that gold plastic, it just is as Zelda as it gets.
All right. I mean, I'd buy it anyway. I mean, I'd prefer not, but that's fine. TJ, where can the good folks at home find you, by the way?
Most of the content that you're going to find from me is right here on the Nintendo Wire YouTube channel. I do a weekly show called Me Weekly. You can definitely expect my impressions on the Direct this week. It comes out every Friday. If you want to follow me on social media, you can check me out at Custom Conquest on Twitter.
You can find me at my personal Twitter account. That's at Amiibo Jason. Otherwise, I am a writer and the founder of Nintendo Wire. So you can find me at nintendowire.com. Right here on YouTube, I try to do 2 to 3 videos a week, maybe even more. If you're new to the channel or you just want to show us some love, hit the like button or subscribe. Consider subscribing. Honestly, it's a blast. We've been doing YouTube now for about 5 years, and we're going to keep doing it. Anything else?
Nope, that does it for me.
All right. Make sure to come back to this video tomorrow and tell us everything we got wrong. Please.
Yeah. And I wouldn't mind a few pats on the back if we happen to get lucky and get a few things right.
We'll see. But until next time, guys, stay wired in.
Thanks for playing.
Bye.